And we are live. Hey, welcome everyone to the Get Good podcast with Carole Freeman. Oh, that's me. The podcast for comedians that are serious about getting good. So whether you're trying to advance beyond the open mic scene or looking to get booked consistently at comedy clubs and beyond, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, comedian Carole Freeman, and on the show I interview headlining comedians, club owners, bookers, festival judges, comedy instructors, and more to find out their best tips, techniques, and strategies so that you can improve your stand-up comedy and get good. Today, I'm excited to have a former Northwest native here. We've got Ken Hamlett, everyone. And let's see, wrong page. Let me look at what... originally from Tacoma, Washington, which I don't know if you know where that's at. Give us a shout out. Ken is now in Chicago. He's a published writer, producer, and host of the award-winning podcast and nationally traveling show, A Drunken Night Out. Ken Hamlett, the self-proclaimed DILF of comedy, is a regular opener for Nimesh Patel and Nate Jackson, and he's started in Step Into Standup, a PBS documentary. He's a two-time winner of Western Oregon University's Last Comic Standing and the winner of 2018 Western Oregon Comedy Competition. Ken has also been featured in comedy festivals such as Just For Laughs Vancouver, Out of Bounds Comedy Festival, Gilda's Laugh Fest, Burbank Comedy Festival, and more. So, gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you for taking the time and your busy schedule to be here.
No, thank you for having me on. It's weird hearing my bio. I'm like,
I was going to ask because it seems surreal hearing all that. Like, have I really done that?
Yeah, that's like it's weird because people ask me like all the time, like, oh, what do you want me to intro you? I'm like, I don't, just say I'm from Seattle, man. Like,
I pulled all that from your website, so I don't know if it's true or not. I just you said it, so
cool. It's actually somebody else's bio. I just put it on my website and just
It's funny, you know, like when people are starting out, some of the credits they come up with initially are like, really? But I mean, does anybody ever check?
No, nobody checks.
But somebody out there would be like, that guy's a fake. He never did any of that stuff.
You just got to make the credits believable.
Yeah. Usually like make up some name of some festival, like Port Angeles is straight to stand-up special comedy festival competition. You were number one.
It's got to be vague enough and specific enough that nobody will question it.
And it has to have the word competition or festival in it. And then
you're good.
You're good. Yeah. I competed once in a at Laughs in Seattle. They had a laugh off comedy competition, which sounds fantastic. I was a competitor in the Seattle laugh off competition.
Yeah.
Sounds great, but it was like one summer they did it years ago, and they were like had some dates they needed to fill. So they're like, hey, you guys want to come and do this thing for us?
You want to fill this Tuesday afternoon?
And I'm like, that sounds like a great credit.
If you do it in a big city, then having the big city name in front of it, you're like, oh, I mean, there's tons of comics there. It's been crazy. And you're like, yeah, but it was only 7 of us that
I was hand selected because I was not busy that weekend with the 2-day notice. Yeah. Oh, well, hey Ken, how long have you been doing comedy?
This October it will be 10 years. And
10 years, awesome.
Yeah, I quit. I actually quit comedy, so it should be 11, but I quit for a full year. And like my 3rd year into comedy, I quit. And just started playing Magic all the time with my free time. And that was it's a weird thing because I love comedy, but during that year, I'm like, I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would. But now I could never see myself quitting.
Did you come back and feel like, wow, I'm just as fresh as ever? Like you hadn't even missed performing, like your ability, right?
Yeah, I think I was actually better, which was crazy. Yeah, because it was like a year. It was like year 3, maybe probably right before year 3. And I had just moved back from New York and I was in Washington and I just couldn't get gigs. Like I couldn't even get on the mics because Tacoma comedy clubs open mic, you had to sign up the month before. And I would just keep forgetting to sign up. And then I was like, I don't know where the other mics are. And I was too lazy to look on Facebook. And so then I was like, I just can't do comedy. I'll just quit. And so I quit. And I was hanging out at a card shop that I play at all the time in Tacoma. And my buddy Terrence Parsons was like, we were just playing Magic. And he was like, I didn't know him at the time. And we were just playing and we started talking. And he was like, well, what else do you do? And he started talking about comedy. I was like, oh, I used to do stand-up. And he was like, yo, my buddy Nate has a show. And I was like, Nate. And he was like, Nate Jackson. I was like, I know Nate. I brought Nate out to my college. And then he was like, I'll get you on the show. And I was like, you can't get me on Nate's show. Like that shit is like massive. And then he got me on Nate's show. And then after that, it was like no turning back. Nate remembered me from coming out to my school and stuff. And it was like after that, Nate was like a good like mentor buddy of mine. And then I just never looked back. Like comedy has been like my tied for first place love. My son and wife all tied together. Yeah.
Oh, it's funny though that your wife and kid don't come first. But comedians know. Comedians know. Honey,
they come first.
There. Yeah,
they come first, but like it's close though. Like it's depends on who calls me. They're like, you want to spend time with your wife and kid, or you want to come out? And I'm like, I'm about to go do a show.
I've yet to meet Nate, and I have yet to be in his new club. So I took off for Phoenix in 2020, and I think he opened the club right after that, right?
He opened the club March 8th would have been like his audition weekend, and then he opened up like a few weeks after that.
Rough.
And yeah. Yeah, that was not great timing. But Nate's like a pillar in Tacoma, even before the club. Like I always say, I've been saying it for years, been championing Nate because he's the best comic out of the Northwest. He's like one of the best comics in the country now. I say he's the most talented comic in the world. But yeah, he's been a pillar of the Northwest comedy scene forever for me. So
that's awesome. I'm getting to know him watching his crowd work clips on TikTok and on Reels. So I'm like, I gotta get over there and meet that guy.
Yeah, impressive.
See that?
And I'm a crowd work guy, and I watch that, and I'm like, this is impressive.
It's fun. It's really fun. Well, take us back. Okay, so you already shared how you quit after 3 years in, and I bet every comic can identify with that. Like so many times, frustration where you're like, this is it. What am I doing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, take us back your career highlights. I mean, I mentioned all the thousands of festivals. We'll talk about that a little bit more too. But like, your early years. What sounds like one of your breaks with Nate.
Yeah.
Getting on Nate's show. What other some of the where was your first open mic?
First open mic. So my first open mic was at the Triangle Lounge up in Salem, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Because I started when I was in college still. I went to Western Oregon. My first time on stage, actually, I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about the mic because I didn't go do a mic until after I had already performed on stage before. So my first time on stage, I was like a peer mentor. I was a Plus team member. And I will toot my horn in saying this. I was like famous on campus. I won't even say popular. I was famous on campus. I was on the cover of the student handbook that they send out to new students.
Why is that not in your bio?
It should be, right? but I was like on the school's website. You go to like woo.edu. I was like on the front page of the website, like very popular on the campus because of my involvement on campus. And so my first time on stage was like during New Student Week. And it was like after pretty much like towards the end of the week. And I had built relationships with all the new students. So all of the incoming freshmen like really knew me. And they were like, I was like the fun guy, right? So I got to perform during New Student Week in like the Pacific Room, which is like our big theater lounge room. Like big, it's just a big room. It's probably like 700-800 people in the room. So my first time on stage was in front of like 700-800 people, and I did like 12 minutes, which I thought was like 5 at the time, and it definitely 12. And I told her, which now I found out afterwards, it was like it was an inappropriate joke. I'll leave it at that. But totally inappropriate joke. And that hooked me. Like that doing that, not the inappropriate joke, but the performing in front of like 800 people for the very first time on stage. And then it was like I have the celebrity element, so it didn't matter how funny I was or how unfunny I was. It was just like huge laughs the whole way through. Like every part where you're supposed to laugh, they were laughing. So it was insane.
Oh, that's so funny because it reminds me actually, this is episode 8, so I'm not that far into this, but I haven't told this story on this show yet. But that reminds me because my first time doing stand-up was not at an open mic either. And it was 10 years before I actually started stand-up.
What?
And it was the same thing. It was at my college. So Bastyr University up north of Seattle, they were having a talent show. And in their big auditorium of, I don't know, 200-300 people. And I'm like, I watched stand-up my whole life. I can do stand-up. And I did 5 minutes, and the same thing. Like, it was like, I have the videos out there somewhere, and it was pretty good for a first time, I just practiced at home and stuff. And so I did that. That would have been like 15 years ago. And then 1 year after that, I did my next performance at the next talent show at school. That's all you need, just once a year performance.
Just once a year, yeah. You'll get proficient eventually.
And then I took like 9 years off, and then things lined up where I was like, I guess I could actually start this, and actually do that. So that's so funny that your first time doing stand-up was also not an open mic. I totally forgot about that too.
Yeah. I'm very grateful that it was not an open mic. Like, I'm glad that I started that way, because like even now I don't like I rarely go to open mics, and it's always been a hard thing for me to go to open mics, because in the Northwest we're blessed because our open mics I've been around the country, and our open mics are the best open mics, like not even close. The Northwest has the best open mics, especially at the clubs. There's a real audience. It's okay. Madison, Wisconsin, they have a comedy club, Madison, like Comedy on State. Their open mics are legendary, but the Northwest is I think ours are better because the clubs are bigger. So
I agree. And people in Phoenix get tired of me saying that. They're like, stop talking about how great Seattle is. Ooh, like, it's not that great. And I'm like, have you been?
Yeah, it is. It is the best place to start because there's an abundance of mics and their quality. So every at bat is like performing on a real show. And so kind of spoiled by being in the Northwest and starting that way. And coming out here to Chicago, I went to like 2 open mics. And I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not.
You quit again.
Will not spend my time at mics. So I immediately just started hitting up bookers and was like, I'm not gonna. I was already like 6 years into comedy also when I moved here or whatever, like 5.5 years, whatever it was. So
okay, it seems like it was just yesterday that you were still in the Northwest. So, but
now when I go back, it doesn't. I'm like, who the hell are all these comics?
Yeah, no, that's so funny. Yeah, I was looking at the list for Tacoma Comedy Club because, like you said, you've got to write in, a month ahead, and they published all of whatever this month's open micers, and I'm like, I think I recognize 3 names on there. I feel like I've only been gone 3 years, but it feels like forever now.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting going there because I'm always like big up in the Northwest. I always tell people, and I still stand on that, where I'm like, my cohort, like the groups of comics like Sherry Hardman, Mary Lou Gamba, Luke Severide, Josh Firestein, like who else? Chris Mejia. Like I'm missing some people for sure, but I'm like my cohort is like, I'll put us up against anybody, like anybody else in the country around that. Like, I think that we're some of the best comics, some of the best writers, best performers. I'm like the Northwest just is a great breeding ground for solid comedy for sure.
I love it. Yeah, those are all great. I'll be staying with Sherry. We're going out to the World Series of Comedy in Las Vegas next week, and I'll be staying with her. So I love her too. So
yeah, she's my best friend.
Aw. I love that. She's amazing. She's amazing. She's one of the top 101 comics in the festival. So I'm excited to see how she does.
Yeah, I think she's going to rock it. She's been killing comedy competitions. Like, she won Tacoma Comedy Club's The Voice.
Oh, yeah.
She finished as like a top 3 at Nate's. Like, that's going to be a great opportunity for her. I'm excited for her.
Yeah, she does really well. She's very hard on herself, but she she's killing it.
Yeah.
And her new podcast, anyways. This is about you, not her. Sorry.
Hey, I always show love to my friends. So
yeah, comedy's a small world, so we got to give those shout outs where we can. So tell us about some of those early gigs. Like, how did you go from, and even in 10 years, comedy is very different now than it was then. And, the path used to be that, especially what we were, told in Seattle, was like, pick your home club and just camp out there, spend all your time and work your way up. You're going to get some, guest spots and host spots, and then you're going to get to feature there. Yeah. What was your career path when you were starting out?
So I moved around a bunch. Like, I started comedy in Oregon and Salem. So there was no club originally when I started. We didn't have a single club in Salem. Yeah. And then right before I moved, they had opened up a club, and that was like Cap City. Now it's Infinity Room. But so it was like, you just do whatever mics were available, and then you would work at the club. So I was there. I lived in Salem for like 2 years doing comedy, and then moved to New York. It was like a year and a half, then moved to New York. So then when I moved to New York, I had no idea what I was doing. I was a baby comic, but I was getting a lot of love because, you're in it's a small community of comics. So you get shows. Like, there's 17 of us. I'm bound to get a couple of those shows. And so moving to New York, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was just hopping on open mics everywhere, no kind of aim or, anything. And then moving to Washington, when I quit, when I came back, then it was like, I started getting booked on a lot of hood rooms, because that was like all the people that I knew. So it was like, Nate's room is like, it was a hood room. And then Bo Blast had a hood room. And like, who else? Ralph Porter, he was booking me on stuff. So then and that was not even what my comedy, it's not what my comedy is still to this day. I'm not a Def Jam comic. I don't, that's not what my target audience is. It's not my demo. So I was doing a lot of those rooms, and then I just started working all over. Like, I was doing everything. I was doing the super far alt rooms. I was doing the conservative rooms in the woods. And I've never been a person that just sat at one club and tried to build a relationship. I was just like, I'm going everywhere. Like, anywhere that'll pay me, I'll go. And so Tacoma Comedy Club is where I say that's my home club, because it was in Tacoma, and I lived in Tacoma, so and I was very close to the club, so I would just go there for their mics, and they had mics like twice a week. And then you get those Sunday spots, and then you get some hosting gigs. But then I wasn't even featuring when I left Tacoma, because I was already at that point. I don't want to misspeak. I don't think I featured at any of the clubs in the Northwest. Well, in the Tacoma, Seattle area. I want to say that I was only hosting at most of them. And when I left, I just started doing festivals, because I was like, I'm just looking at other people's career paths. And what I do, I study other comics. I'm like, what did they do that was successful? And then how can I mimic that or make that work towards what I want and what I envision my career to be like? And so I seen that a lot of people were doing festivals. So very early on, I started applying to festivals. And so I've done so many festivals. And so I started learning. Then I started really doing the research, and I was like, what festivals are worthwhile going to? And so 2018 was when I auditioned for JFL. So 2018, this is like kind of when comedy started taking off for me. 2017 is when I auditioned for Comedy Central. I did Heart of the City. And I didn't get that, and then that pushed me to really start putting energy into comedy. And then I started trying to work at all the clubs. I wasn't really getting the feature work, but then I started applying to a lot of festivals and kind of working in other cities. And I started going up to Canada a lot, and I was doing gigs at their clubs. I was doing spots. There was I did headline a club in Canada, but it wasn't a real club. Is everybody has these pseudo clubs. So I did that, and then that got me some attention in Canada. So then I started doing more work in Canada, and then I auditioned for JFL, New Faces at Tacoma Comedy Club. I was one of the only comics that were chosen that didn't have TV credits already at the time. Everybody else that was chosen, they're all vets, like Monica Nevi Andrew Rivers, like Corey Michaelis, like it was all the vets, like Gabriel Rutledge. And I was like, it was me and Adam Lucky were the two like young comics that were chosen to audition. So we auditioned, and was Jeff Singer, the dude who ran JFL at the time, he really liked my set. And I thought he was kind of blowing smoke up my butt. And and then it was just like, how long have you been doing it? I was like, 5 years. And he was like, yeah, you're ahead of, like, funny wise, you're ahead of where you should be at this point. And I was like, okay, like, I'm just thinking he's blowing smoke. And he was like, these are the festivals you should apply to. Like, I want to see you at these festivals this year. So he gave me like a list of festivals. And then I applied to like 3 of them. I got into them. And then at Out of Bounds, I saw him. And he recognized me and came up and talked to me. And I was drunk, and I kind of made a bad had a bad conversation because of it. And, it was the end of the festival, and I had a great week. So then after that, when I came back, I was like, oh, it's time to, I was like, I'm not moving up the ranks here in Washington. So it's like time to move. Like I was like, people just still see me as like a host, or, you know, whatever, small level comic. And I was doing a lot of like the featuring at the like little bar gigs and headlining some stuff and that kind of stuff. But I was like, I'm not getting the club work like I want. So I just moved. And then when I moved to Chicago, I still was in touch with the Bart Entertainment Club guys at Tacoma Comedy Club. And so I was like, hey, I'm moving to Chicago. They got me in contact with Skyline. I got a couple of hosting weekends. The manager loved me. So then I got to feature. And then at that time, I was just sending out emails. Like I wasn't attached to any clubs, but I was like, I know, I kind of understand the system now. And it's just sending out a bunch of emails to just every little club that's around. And that's what really got me in. And then I started producing a show, which I've been doing that for a while. And I'll talk about that too. But I just started sending out a bunch of emails to a bunch of people, and then they would have me feature. And my big thing is like, I want to be the funniest comic on every show. Like I'm not a comic that's like, stay in your lane, save room for the headliner. I'm like, no, if you're the headliner, you got to follow me. And so there was a lot of shows where I was on and I'm like killing. And then the club was like, you shouldn't be featuring here. Like you should be headlining. And so then I started getting a lot more headlining gigs. So, and producing the show helped me get a lot more headlining gigs also, because the show sells a lot of alcohol. So,
oh, that's awesome. Well, let's go back to the festivals. Did you talk about, you know, there's so much about festivals that, to know and to talk about. So like, you know, share with us, you know, tips for submission video. Let's start with that.
Oh, so submission videos, they need to be one angle, like right now, just this one angle. I'm not switching camera angles. I'm not jumping from one point to the next. It's one angle, it's one set, and it's completely through. The intro needs to be very short. The whole video should essentially just be you. You want a little bit of a audience applaud as you're coming on the stage, and then you can go into the audience clapping you off stage. It's really good so they can see how the audience received you. Especially like if you get like standing ovation or like, you know, the whistles and all that kind of stuff. That's like really good to bookers. They love seeing that stuff as well. But your set should just be a set, and it's from one camera angle. It's clear. The audio should be good. And nowadays it's like, you should have clear video and clear audio. Even if you tape it on a cell phone, they got lapel mics now that you can plug into your cell phone. So if you tape it on your cell phone, at least use a lapel mic. That'll cost you $100. Plug that junk into your cell phone and then get a quality video and audio. So that's the audio, very much so needs to be clear, because if they can't hear your jokes, you're just wasting. You just threw away $20-$40 on a submission. So one shot, one angle, clear audio, clear video. That's it.
What about content? Do you think about like different set for different festivals, or are you just like, I'm just going to send them my best 5 minutes or 7 minutes, whatever they're looking for?
So I actually just recently got like, I've only been denied to like 3 festivals, and and this just recent, and I'm starting to realize like, I've hated when people call me a dirty comic because I don't think I'm a dirty comic, but I do cuss a lot. And I also ran into a situation where I was sending out clean tapes. And then there was one club where I sent out a clean tape to them. I just taped a clean tape. So I sent them the clean tape. And then I came out there and I did my material. And they were like, hey, we're going to send you home with the check. Don't finish the rest of the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, no, I'll clean it up. Like, we're good. And so I did finish the weekend. But for me now, I'm learning like, okay, you should have different types of tapes. I don't change my comedy for anywhere. I'm like, this is my comedy and people like it or they don't like it. But for submission tapes, you should keep that in mind. Like there are some submissions that like, if you look at just look at who made the festival. And then you can see like, oh, all of these are woke comics. Should I even waste my time submitting to a festival if I know that I don't fit the target demo that they're looking for? Like if this is a festival where it's all woke comics and you're not a woke comic, don't apply. Like if it's a festival where it's like all, cringy comedy and you're not a cringy comic, don't apply. Like if it's something that you're not going to enjoy, for one, don't do it. Even if you think it's career developing, it's just going to make your head hurt when you're there. But you should definitely look at previous acceptance years and go, what did those comics do? And does my style match theirs? And does my content match theirs? Then you can decide whether or not you're going to apply. Because I definitely did not do that for these ones. And then I looked at the people that got in and I was like, I wasn't going to get in. Like, at least not with the tape I sent. Like, for sure not going to. So I would keep in mind like what kind of content you're using. And typically speaking, you shouldn't be sending in like blue tapes for submissions. Like it's already a point against you. So you have to be even better than everybody else. If you send in like a clean tape, that's going to help you out a lot because they're like, okay, this person A isn't going to offend anybody, and B can work with the largest amount of audience members. So you can work from young to old because some festivals have like shows with kids in it and stuff.
So what should comics go into festivals? Let's say they get, they're applying to them, they're selecting the ones they want to apply to. What's the mindset like of what you should aim to get out of a festival? Why should you apply to festivals?
I think those things change. It varies based off of what you want out of comedy. So for me, the guys on my wall behind me, there's Bernie Mac, Richard Pryor. I got Chris Rock on the wall. I got Eddie Murphy on the wall. So like, that's what I aspire to be. So my goal is to get to do whatever is necessary to get to that point. So some of those bigger festivals, like those are opportunities for agents to be there. That's opportunities for TV execs to be there. That's opportunities for clubs, managers, and owners to be there. So for me, the festivals have to have industry there. Otherwise, I'm not applying. If it's a new festival, odds are it doesn't have industry. So there's no reason for me to even go. But then if you're like a newer comic or you're a comic that's on the cusp, like where I was when I moved to Chicago, and that time I wish I would have spent more time going to different festivals, like in cities that I was considering moving to. So I wish I would have taken a year. I moved in like a 2-month time frame. So it was like very impromptu. I wish I would have just taken a year, applied to festivals in like the markets that I wanted to move to, which was like Austin. And at the time, Austin wasn't really that dope. New York, I wanted to move back to New York. And then Atlanta was on my list, and then Chicago. And I would have came here. I would have been immersed in those markets because that's what, like early on, you should be using festivals to go, what markets do I want to move to? What markets do I want to build a fan base in? What markets do I want to tour to often? So then you can use those festivals to do those things where you're like, all right, I'm checking into this city. I want to see if I want to move here. So now I get to be immersed in the world of comedy within this market, and then see if it's actually a market that you could see yourself staying in long term. Because unfortunately, when you move somewhere, you're kind of stuck a little bit. I would say,
unless you live out of your car.
Yeah, unless you want to live out your car. Yeah, if you want to do that. Unfortunately, I got a wife and kid. I can't. My wife ain't doing that. So yeah, I think for me, I always tell comics, don't apply to every festival that you see. I'm like there's a list of festivals. I'm not going to name them because it's kind of shitty to name festivals, but there's like a list of festivals that really do matter. And Jeff Singer was the one that kind of put me on. And I mean, there's obviously, like, you listen to podcasts, guys will talk about what festivals matter and what festivals don't matter. Well, they'll more so just talk about what festivals matter. And nowadays there's like 700 million festivals, so it's kind of like I would use them to just network, and I would use them to go visit cities that you want to potentially move to for younger comics, for sure. Like younger comics, there's certain festivals where I'm like, I wouldn't even encourage you to apply to them because the odds are you're probably not going to get into them. So, but definitely use them to go see some markets, see where you want to eventually move to.
Oh, that's a great perspective. And you said earlier too that how you studied other comics that were successful, and that was one of the paths that they took, was being in festivals. And I've heard that, go because you want to network, but I love the perspective of, and check out the city. Is this a place you could see yourself living?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times this town of Salem, Oregon that you start in is not going to be the town that's going to take you all the way to your Eddie Murphy Raw album recording.
Yeah, I love Salem, but you're not gonna get famous there.
Well, isn't Wask the Dry College? Is that
it used to be one? Like that area used to be dry, and now it's like they got alcohol and shit now.
Oh, okay. They're like,
dry, yeah. I found that out. I was like, I didn't know that it was like a dry town, but that was like before I got there. So
yeah, because I grew up in Oregon outside of Corvallis, and so that was always like Monmouth, right, is where the college was. Yeah, like, oh, that's that dry town up there. It was always just a weird thing of like, you're not in Utah. Why are you doing? And then we were always because I went to Oregon State University, and so we were always baffled by like, why would students go there? So right. I'm glad I met one. You lived through it.
Yeah, it might have been like me where you didn't do the research in the end.
But you still, I mean, we heard that that school was pretty rowdy anyway. So yeah. All right. So how'd your show Drunken Night Out? How did the inspiration for that come, and how tell us about the birth of it, the gestation and birth of your baby show?
So the show actually initially was called Inebriated, Hydrated, and Faded. Okay. And that show concept was stolen. Not by me. So Stephen Mays, who's a comic out of Savannah, Georgia, he moved up to the Northwest. And at the time I was producing a show at this, like, it wasn't a brewery, but like something like a brewery. Right. And so I met Steve, and I was like, at the time, I'm still to this day, I always bring in comics. Like, if you're hungry and like you want to get to work and be serious about comedy, I'll take you on the road with me. I'll get you connected as much as I am, especially if you're younger in comedy than me. Like, and even I still got a big homie right now that I take on the road with me and get him connected to stuff. But he was really hungry, and then he like pitched, and he was like, bro, I love what you're doing. I love that you got an audience here. I got a show concept, and it's called Drunk, Sober, High. And he was like, this is a show that they do around the country. And I was like, I'm real big on like not stealing stuff. So I took that show concept, and he was like, well, one comic will just be drunk, one comic will be high, and one comic will be sober. And I was like, let's have them start the show sober, all of them. And then one comic gets drunk, one comic gets high, and the other one stays sober. But then they got to do crowd work on whatever topics get thrown out. So then that's how the show started. And then, and we did it like that. It was Inebriated, Hydrated, and Faded for like a year, 2 years maybe. And then when I moved to it was like a year and a half. Then when I moved to Chicago, we kind of had like a little, I don't know. I moved away, and I was like, I'm not going to do that show anymore. I'm going to change the name to Drunken Night Out because weed isn't legal in the Midwest. Like when I moved out here, there's really nowhere where it was legal. And so I changed it to a Drunken Night Out. And then it was like I just had the podcast and the show where people are coming on, they're telling the drunken stories. So we had a podcast that was just me and him, and we kind of tell drunken and high stories. And then there's other elements of the podcast. It was really fun. But then I changed it to just a storytelling podcast when it became a Drunken Night Out. And then I was still doing the show where like comics would start off sober, they get drunk, and then they do crowd work. And then I wanted to work on storytelling. So I added the podcast to the show, where the live show now is like it's just me and one comic or me and two comics. And you start the show off with the podcast, like story, drunken or high story. Then you do some stand up. Then you get drunk as shit and you riff on whatever the crowd throws out. And so it's like a fun time at the party. And over the last few years, I've like been just nailing down like little things. And it's become like I love the structure of the show, and it's super fun. And clubs love it, and people that come to the shows have a great time. I coined the phrase like early on, like it's not a comedy show, it's a comedy party. And that is 100% what it is. Comics will do it and they'll be like, man, I love this. We should do this all the time. And I'm like, I do this all the time.
Yeah. I've been on your podcast before, so I'm gonna have to find the link to that episode and plug it in somewhere.
You did it. You did it during COVID times when I was doing I was doing crazy stuff where I was doing an episode a day.
Oh my gosh. We were so hungry for anything to do. Yeah.
It made me hate the podcast. I stopped doing the podcast.
I was trying to do a daily show as well, live streamed with like 5 other people on it every day. And then we were also doing weekly shows. Yeah. We were just like, what the heck are we going to do? Let's try a bunch of things and see. We got a lot of free time. So, okay, I'll have to or if you have it handy, then I'll plug it in somewhere in the show notes or link somewhere.
I'll shoot you the link. I'll go through and look through the stories. I remember the clip talking about from your show, like your episode went.
Oh, you remember? Because I'm like, I don't remember the story I told, so I can't wait to, or maybe I'll be embarrassed. Whatever.
Yeah, you might be embarrassed.
Yeah. It'll be the first time. So let's see, advice you have for comics about if they've got an idea, like a show concept, like how would somebody know if it's something that they're maybe ready to kind of promote to clubs, or if they're, they need to, work on a few things first before they'd be ready for something like that? Or
I say always run it first. Like run the show at least one time first. Like don't just try to pitch something to a club and be like, this will work. Because if you bring the show to the club and it fails, they're not bringing your ass back. Like that is, okay, you have to make the
proof of concept. Like run it and know that it is a success and that it works first. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Because so when me and Steven, we did the show at a bar first, and then there was an old comedy club like Tacoma Grit or Underground Grit or something like that, Grit City Comedy Club, and that club failed. And I didn't know that it was a club space, but I just found this bar and they had a dope space in the back, and then I found out later that it was a club. So then we started running the show there. It was all right. I was just looking through my ticket links. We had like 30 pre-sales or something like that, 25 pre-sales for that first show, and that's okay. And then people, there's some walk-up purchases and stuff like that, so I think we had maybe 40 people, and for a lot of people that's fine. But when you pitch a show to a club, it's got to be like, you got to be doing decent numbers, especially if you're pitching it to big clubs. I don't even pitch my show to a lot of big clubs because for one, you're not going to get an email back 9 times out of 10. But I have gotten the show at like some substantial clubs, like 150 seats, 200 seats. I do the show at like a theater now every once in a while. And I actually moving the show back to the Northwest again. I'm going to be doing some theaters, and I do Tacoma Comedy Club, and I do all the BART clubs like Skyline, Summit City, Louisville, like all those clubs. So I would definitely do a proof of concept show. Do it at a bar, run the kinks out of it before you bring it to a club. Like test it, show that it's proof of concept. And then when you can start selling out little spots, then you can send that and take pictures, document everything, and get bar tabs. I get bar tab receipts from places. And like that way I can go, hey, we sold $1,500 of drinks in an hour, which now my record is $4,500 worth of drinks. And so I
and
can
the
go to
Lyft and
places.
Uber sales were off the charts after the show too.
Yeah, I'm trying to help your city's economy with this show. And so for me, like when you can show numbers, I'm a big number guy just because my work background. And so like I take pictures. I'm like, hey, these are the pictures from the show. So it's not just me being like, I've sold 100 tickets. I'm like, no, here's video evidence of 100 people. Here's some bar sales from some previous shows. So now that I can show you, not only are we going to sell tickets, there's also going to be alcohol sales, because that's all we are as comedians, is we're professional drink sellers. Like that's it.
So. Yeah, I love that. I love all of that advice, because I mean, a lot of comics don't understand the business side, right? They're just like, feel like they just need to get in and get some stage time someplace, but you're really presenting a profitable business model, you know, a show for them that's going to be profitable, and that's going to be so much more appealing, you know, than just like, hey, I got this idea, can you let me try it?
That is, if you say that to a club, that is the quickest way to never get booked there and never be treated like a professional. Like, I got an idea, want to let me try it? No, show them a concept, a proof of concept, at the very least something that you've tested at least once, and then you can bring it to a club. But I would test the shit out of it so it's good, and knowing that you're bringing them a solid product, because even if it doesn't go well, and like numbers wise, if people had a good time while they were there and it was organized and well ran, then the club will go, we can maybe give them another shot, but it'll be down the road when they figure some stuff out. If you take a concept there and it's not run well, the show goes overtime or undertime, it like you get drunk, don't get messed up unless the club really likes you. Even I've tested that limit. Some don't get drunk unless they really, really like you and you're doing a good job at your show. But make sure it's just well run. It's a business. Like, we're businesses. We're selling a business. We are businesses. We're selling something to them, a product. And that product is our comedy. That product is our show. That product is our likability. That product is getting people in the seats. So treat it like that. Like, you can have fun. You can be the funniest person in the world. My main goal is being the funniest person in the world. But I also understand that it's a business and I need to approach it as such. So, yeah,
I just like to hammer that home to comics. They got to realize, you know, the goal of the club that you're trying to get into is to make money. And so I like, so Rick Bronson's House of Comedy is out in, you know, Phoenix, and their tagline, I think, is like the perfect reminder of the order and priorities of a club. It says drink, dine, laugh, in that order. They want you drinking. They want to make a bunch of money there, sell some food, make some money. And also, hey, you know, you're here to laugh too. So,
and they don't care if you laugh. That's why social media comics get booked, and they're like, they didn't do well, but they sold 1,000 tickets this weekend.
Lots of booze and lots of food. So
yeah, so like being the funniest person is not as important as being marketable and understanding the business. Learn the business. That is my biggest piece of advice for young comics. Learn the business. Learn how to market to people. Learn how to get butts in seats. Produce a show. And do a themed show, a dating show, a drinking show, a weed show, something, whatever your interest is, do that and make it a show. Because if you're interested in it, somebody else is. There's nerd shows, there's all kinds of stuff. Figure out what your market is, which is something that I'm still struggling with. Figure out your niche. Like Luke Severide he's niched down to like metal. Like, he understands that that's his niche. That is, you find your niche, you find your market, you find the thing that you're good at. Nate Jackson's crowd work. Find that thing, niche down, and then market to that, and then sell that to the clubs, because that's what they're going to buy. They're not going to buy the fact that you're funny. And trust me, I know this because I'm funny, and I am not getting all the gigs that I wish I was getting. Like, figure out the marketing side.
And Matt Rife is going after the MILFs. So
yeah,
you know, exactly. I'm just saying his name for the algorithm so that you know, gets more. Matt Rife.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that I've been lifting weights trying to get swole. Like,
oh my god! Oh, the produce your show. That's something else that I had Corey Michaelis on another episode, and that was one of his top pieces of advice, was produce a show, because you're just going to learn so much about the business side, like you just said. So, you look, win, lose, or fail, you're going to learn a lot in the process. So
yeah, it's like producing a show is literally for me comedy. Like I've always looking back, and I was like really modest about comedy. Now I'm not. I won't. I'm like I'm great. I just Sherry was the reason why I'm like that now, where I have to like just say that I'm great. But early on, I was like funny, but I wasn't getting the gigs like I thought I should be. And then I started learning the business side of it, and then I started producing a show. And honestly, them checks from producing a show is way better than the checks that I get from headlining a club. The checks that I get from producing the show is like insane in comparison, because I'm getting door deals that headliners that have been doing this forever and that have massive TV credits get because the show is successful. So if you can produce a show, you can supersede the 20 years that it takes to get all the Comedy Central credits and all the other fame. And you don't even have to have a fan base if you understand marketing and how to produce a successful show that can sell tickets and alcohol. So,
oh, great. Do you have some tips about sending out emails? And I know the answer is send lots of them, but I think sometimes brand new comics don't realize that's even part of the business side of this, that you're not just going to be so funny at the open mics that you just get booked at the clubs. I think they think there's some magic bridge that opens up and then they just get booked at the clubs magically. And then I know that some, further in comics that are just like, but I'm so great, they should just book me. They should just know. What do you have to say about sending out booking emails?
Hit up a comic that you see that's getting work and ask them for their email structure. Shoot, hit me up. I'll send you my email structure. I got my email structure from Andrew Rivers. He was the one that shared that structure with me, because I was of the mindset like, oh, I'll just be funny and then I'll get club gigs. And that does not work. Like some people it will work for, but it's so few and far between. Like, and you also have to be the right place at the right time. Like you have to send your email at the right time. Like I've had so many of my friends that'll be like, hey, can you give me such and such as email? And I give out emails all the time, unless a booker has asked me not to. But I give out emails all the time because I'm like, it just makes like you getting a gig is not going to stop me from getting a gig. Like your light shining doesn't stop my light from shining. My light is always going to shine. So get a structured email. Don't just send a hey. And also when you're sending your avails, don't send 192 dates. Lie. Make yourself look like you're somewhat busy. Like don't send all of October, all of November, all of December, all of January. Send like 2 or 3 weekends out of the one of the months, and then send like 1 weekend for each of those, or 2 weekends for each of those other months. Like no club is going to book you. Work gets work. So no club is going to book you if you don't look like you're working. And then also post your calendar online. I've learned that from other people. I'm not always good about it, but my calendar is also usually booked up. So it's not as important, but it does help a lot. Like when you post your calendar, I had a club hit me up and was like, hey, I see you're going to be out here close to us. Can you tag on to Sunday and do that night as well?
Oh,
like that kind of stuff happens. So post your calendar all the time. But when it comes to the emails, have a structured email. Make sure you have some avails, not every freaking day of the month on there. Because I've seen some comics do that, because one of my buddies is a booker and he told me. And what else? Make sure you have a good like description of like some of your credits within your structured email as well. I know like in Andrews, he had like his the dry bar special, like numbers from there, like millions of views, et cetera, et cetera. It has to be something that like stands out to a booker if they do open your email. That's like, oh, this person can be a draw, or oh, this person is funny, or oh, this person has done something. So like whatever your most important thing is that you've done, include that in the email. So like if you're a regular at like Chicago comics, all should have regular at the Laugh Factory Chicago. Even if you don't regularly perform there, put the club in there. If you perform there at least a couple of times throughout that year, you got some pictures of you on stage. So if they do look you up on Facebook, they can go, oh yeah, I've seen this comic at that comedy club before. So, something that's notable, and include a high quality video in the email. Holy crap. The submission email that we talked about, it needs to be that video, and it has to be nice, and it has to be like you getting laughs every like 15 seconds. Like you should be getting laughs every 15 seconds. I wouldn't even say 30 seconds. I would say every 15 seconds at the minimum. And like big laughs. Try to limit the cussing in it and try to work clean if you can. But if not, then they'll find somebody that lines up with you if you're funny enough. You know what I mean? So that would, and send out emails all the time. I don't send out as much as I should. But you should be kind of annoying. Like don't be begging people and writing them messages after you sent the email, but just send out that email repetitively. Like the book rat Funny Bone that books all the funny bones. He says send them an email like every 5 weeks. So send an email every 5 weeks, every 4 weeks, like once a month, send out avails, something like that. And try to make sure you got some dates going on your calendar so you can look like you're doing something right.
I'm going to give a shout out to, there's an episode of The Business of Comedy. I think that's the name of it. Business of Comedy. Tom Symes, owner of Stir Crazy out in Glendale, Arizona. He's got a podcast, and there was an episode that was just all about booking emails, and he interviewed a whole bunch of different club owners. And it was really interesting because some of them were like, yeah, send it every 6 months. And some were like, oh, I don't want this and I want that. And so it sounds like it's kind of a crapshoot, try things. Don't take it personal if they don't reply or even open your email. They've got, thousands and thousands coming in. But I'll put a link somewhere to that episode that was really, gave lots and lots of really insightful too, of hearing from the booker side of it, the things they got going on and the things that catch their attention. And one of the things they were talking about too was like, a lot of times they may have like a last minute need to fill something. And so sometimes it's just, a lot of times, like everything, luck of the draw, being in the right place at the right time. And
I would say for sure, like, don't get offended if people don't respond to your emails. Because when I send out emails, maybe like 1 out of the 15 emails that I send gets responded to. And a lot of what I've done now is like book out way in advance, so that way I don't have to feel like I'm rushing to try to fill my calendar. Like, oh no, my calendar is empty. If it's empty, that was like intentionally. But I like try to book way in advance, like as far in advance as you can, so that way you can get ahead of the work. And other comics aren't going to be they're going to be trying to fill in stuff like the month before, which don't ever do that, because you're not going to get the dates. Like send that stuff out like the quarter ahead at least. But if you can get it out like 2 quarters ahead, like a half a year, that sort of stuff. Like right now, what month is it? It's September. So most clubs are booking like January, February. So like I've already started booking out my first quarter of 2024. And usually by December, I have like most of my the following year booked out already. So that's how you typically should be trying to make your calendar. Like most comics do it that way.
One other question I wanted to squeeze in here too is just some thoughts that you have about funding your comedy career. Because in the beginning, you're definitely putting a lot more money in than you're getting out of it. And so, festival submissions cost money, and then you've got to pay for your travel there. And it's interesting because I'm, talking to some friends and family about me going to attend the main event for World Series of Comedy. And they're like, you have to pay for your own flight there? Like, people that are not in comedy don't understand at all. Like, why would you pay to go to that? Getting, tips for comics about how do you look at, choosing what you spend money on? How do you balance that? Do you have a specific budget? Like, how do you manage all that?
So for me, that's why I'm big on like, don't apply to festivals unless there's industry there, because 9 times out of 10 it is. For me, I'm like, it's a waste of time. But I also think that's because of what I'm trying to accomplish in comedy and where I'm at career wise. Sure, they could be beneficial. Sure, I could make some connections, or I could just go do a weekend on the road and make money that weekend. So it's like but I've also had the conversation of like, you can invest in yourself by doing those things with hopes that it pays off in dividend later. So for me, I think you just know that you're going to take some L's. You're going to take that on the chin. It's just a part of the process. You will get to the point where you're making good money on the weekends. Because if I look back and 5 years ago when I was like, oh, I'm making good money doing comedy. And now I'm like, when people hit me up for like traveling for shows like that, I'm like, no, I'm not leaving my house for that. Not to be rude, but it's like you will like level up, and eventually like all those $20 and $40 gigs are great, like when you're first starting off, but then you get to the point where you're like, that doesn't, like, you're not gonna go do a half an hour for $40 because that's not smart. And you're just devaluing comedy for yourself. But I like early on when you're doing those festivals, you're just gonna take some L's, try to make it as cheap as possible, especially even when you're doing the road gigs, like early on, like you'll go out and do like triple runs where like people know, like everybody knows about triple runs. You're going out and you're doing like $100 gig and you're not getting your stuff like a hotel paid for. So now you gotta like have merch. That's a big thing. If you got merch, you can make money. And that's usually how you make money early on in comedy. And then like staying on people's couches. If you're doing a festival, one thing that I've done also, if you're at the point where you can do that, if you're doing a festival, hit up bookers in that city and then get paid to be out there. So like when I did Out of Bounds in Austin, sure, it was an opportunity where obviously industry is there because the JFL people were there. But I hit up bookers and I got my flight and everything paid for by doing like a paid show while I was in town for a festival. So now my festival was just a free trip. I broke even, and you don't have to make money, but if you can break even on stuff like that, that's important, where you get to be seen by industry, you get to make the networking connections, you get to be in a market that you want to be in. And now you just broke even. You just did a free trip. So now you just go party all weekend and you don't have to be like, dang, I'm coming home with a loss of like $800 to $1,000 for a week of shows or something like that. So, I mean, be prepared to take some of them L's because them L's is definitely coming on those early stages for some of that stuff. So.
Well, Ken, this has been amazing. I could talk to you lots more, but unfortunately, I got another call here. Did I spell your website right here? Let's see. KendaleHamlett.com. Did I spell it right?
That is one of the links. The other link is bigblackschlongs.com.
Oh.
That's bigblackschlongs.com.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that one. We'll put this one on for the algorithm friendly YouTube. We like you, YouTube. Oh, so much great advice. Thank you so much for sharing everything. Tons of great stuff. And you can reach out. You can follow. Look at his calendar, KendaleHamlett.com. And we'll put the links in the show notes and all that. But anything else you wanted to add real quick, Ken?
Man, invest in yourselves. Comics, invest in yourselves. Like I spent all my money on podcast equipment like early on. So I had like thousands, even in my studio right now, I have like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff. If you take your comedy money and throw it back into other stuff, it's just gonna be worth it long term. And now I am gonna open up a podcast studio in the city because I have all the equipment. So it's like it's no cost to me. So nice. Well, besides the building, but but invest in yourself. Take all your money that you make, take all your comedy earnings. Don't spend it on real life, spend it on more comedy stuff. So if you got $40 for a show, take that money, pay for a festival that you want to pay for. If you know, all of that stuff. We talk about taking L's. You don't have to take L's if you take the comedy money and spend it on comedy stuff. So one way to think about it. It's free money then.
Great last nugget there. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it so much. Hopefully I'll see you in person soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm trying to get out to Arizona too. So we'll see. I'm putting out my calendar right now for 2024. So probably get out there.
Awesome. That'll be great. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you everyone for watching and or listening. And that's all for the show today. We'll see you next time. Bye now.